I did want to talk about your thoughts because about protein, because most fitness influencers, I would say, are preaching the 1.6 is enough. So if you're not aware of the debate, it's 1.6 grams of protein per kilo of body weight is enough. We don't need to go higher. That's the ceiling. Any more than that is potentially just a waste of time. And I'm obviously interested in this because protein is a massive part of what we do, and people already don't eat enough. And you know, I'm in. I subscribe to Alan Aragon's Research Review and
Yep.
you know, quite a few other ones, and I love diving into it. And I just feel like, and I've never really posted about it, but I feel like it could be more. And for me, and maybe for you, it should be more. And people that take shit a bit more seriously in the gym. How much protein do you think we really need? And if it is for this person or that person, you know, dive into who for. But personally, I guess my stance is I think 1.6 is a great start and a good place for people to begin. But it really depends on who the person is and what their goal is.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like 1.6 as well, and then push it a bit higher for people who are like training very hard, very serious, that kind of thing. There's a couple of thoughts I have around it because there are debates about like how we're measuring muscle protein synthesis in the studies. You know, so the studies that are recommending, oh, you don't need more than 1.4. There's questions around like, well, you know, is the measurement really showing us what we think it's showing, this kind of thing. And I think some of the more recent studies have maybe said, oh, actually looking back at these studies, maybe they were undershooting a little bit because they didn't measure it quite the right way. I've seen some comments saying like, well, a lot of people are so focused on muscle protein synthesis, but what about all the other lean tissue in the body, like your organs and your bones and your collagen and all of that stuff? We might need a little bit more protein to optimize that as well. So I think that all kind of says that perhaps a little bit higher is useful. Something that I often see, though, as a bit of a problem is that people seem to not consider protein from every source of food in their diet. So sometimes when you're telling someone, look, you should be eating 1.6 or maybe even as much as 2 grams per kilo, they're going, oh, it's so much chicken breast, or like, I don't want to take protein shakes or whatever. But they're not counting the protein from their rice, from their oats, from the seeds they put in their muesli, like all of this stuff, which to me is like, that all counts. But for some reason, because it's a plant food and it's not a quote-unquote protein food, it's not the protein archetype that we think of, they feel like it doesn't count. Source. Yeah, so sometimes it feels a bit like, you know, we want to keep the bar realistic for your average person who's training, and just tell someone, you know, you need 2.5 grams per kilo for someone who is serious about their training, but is maybe just like, mate, I just don't want to have that much protein every day.
It's a lot.
You can say, well, look, 1.6, you're still going to get awesome results. At the same time, maybe it's not as hard to hit 1.6 or 2.0 as you thought, because you already eat all of these foods that you enjoy, and they actually have, you know, like if you have 40 grams of oats, it's got like 4 grams of protein in it or something, and that adds up, you know. So I understand the argument for eating a bit more, and I understand the argument for erring a little bit higher. I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess I'm not 100% sure like what the threshold is, but it's probably again contextual as to how much muscle mass are you actually carrying on your frame. I'm not convinced that like, you know, I'm over 90 kilos with quite a lot of muscle versus, you know, a woman who is just as serious about her training but is maybe 50 kilos and doesn't have as much lean mass as I do. Does she still, like, I know the prescriptions are relative to body mass, but still I'm not sure that those would be the same for each of us, and I don't think it's clear in the literature either. So I think there is a little bit of individual context to think about there. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Where 1.6, I agree, is pretty good. If people can get a bit higher, then I tend to say, look, probably safe to go a bit higher. You might get a little bit more out of it. I mean, it's definitely safe, but you'll probably get little bit more out of it, just to kind of give you a bit of a safety margin in terms of your gains, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a lot too, like shooting a bit higher just so that you can fall on something that's more realistic.
Yeah.
If you like, you know, if you don't hit 2, you fall on 1.8, 1.6, you know, it's still a very nice place to land. And I think for the most part, you know, the 1.6 is a great place to start, but I guess I just don't like the absolutism that it's said with, and the authority that it's like, no, don't worry, just 1.6
agree.
and you're fine. You know, that's I think that's never a good story.